back to our Bible chats. I'm going to talk today a little bit about self-validation and the Bible. And someone has said that self-validation is accepting your own internal experience, your thoughts, and your feelings. Now, of course, accepting that as actually being what it is does not necessarily transfer into thinking that it is actually right or you're comfortable. You can be uncomfortable with your self-validation, acknowledging that changes need to take place. On the other hand, often the self-acceptance phenomena in our day is just accept yourself like you are. Now, there are certain aspects of self that we need to accept. The way you look, for the most part, is something that is there, and you didn't put that upon yourself. It just happened to be. Now, of course, for me, to eat a little less cornflakes would not hurt, and to make that change would make my wife somewhat happy. Now, self-validation also should be looked at from a Christian perspective. If you're looking at it from that perspective, looking at it where we can say, you know what, we're doing okay, we're comfortable, I'm quite happy with myself. And then, of course, what happens is, guess what? God shows up and says, hey, you know what, in many ways, you missed the mark. The word sin in the Bible is something that is related to the fallenness of humanity. And sin basically goes back to the art of archery, where you miss the mark of God. You miss the mark of presenting and representing and reflecting the glory of God. And that missing the mark has to be dealt with. And God confronts us with that through Jesus, who says, even if you're comfortable with yourself, wait a minute, you do have an issue. And my self-validation from the Bible and the perspective of the Bible and the perspective of God is a little bit what Paul says. I don't really care, he says, if people outside the realm of my friendship or even apart from myself, if they evaluate me in a negative way, that is, yes, I consider it, but that's not the essential evaluation that I'm looking for. He says, you know what, I'm so comfortable with where I'm at that I don't even trust my own evaluation. He says, but what I do trust is God's evaluation of how does he look at what I'm at. And how do you value yourself? Is valuing yourself based on how you feel, or is valuing yourself based on what God says about me? Now, God has said very clearly that I love you with an everlasting love. You have great value to me, and the crucifixion, the sacrifice Jesus paid for us, is indicative of that. And so my self-validation doesn't stand alone. I allow others in the realm of my relationships to prod me, to understand what I am and what I should maybe be. But most of all, as Paul says, I look at what does God have for me in terms of what he wants from me. He told his disciples, talk about self-validation. He told his disciples, you guys, without me, you can do nothing. Now, he's not devaluing them. He's just saying you're limited in what you can do, very limited. Everything you have, God says, you have received. And so it's important in our self-validation to understand that the outside source called God really looks at us and says, you have great value to me. I will go to the ends of the earth to regain your love, to regain you as a person. But you have changes you need to make, and I can make those changes. First of all, by acknowledging that I have missed the mark. So my self-validation is significant from God's perspective when I understand that I have missed the mark. But missing the mark doesn't end your life. Missing the mark, you really begin your life with a loving, caring, forgiving God. I'll be doing a follow-up on this to bring it down to a more day-to-day living and how you validate your being, how you validate who you are as a person, and how some people struggle so desperately with it and others just seem to accept it. So for now, give this some thought, and I'll be following up with another video sometime soon. God bless and have a great day.